Do we know what ranked choice voting is? So basically, it's just a way to simplify this so that if, let's just say, hypothetically, we've got 5 candidates who want to be our U.S. Senate nominated candidate in 2020. So as currently stated, of those 5, and let's say we've got 50 people voting, if every candidate gets 10 votes, well, that's a really bad example. All right. Let's say it goes like 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, whatever that support level is. Right now, we'd say nobody got the majority of 26 of those 50. Let's vote again. And we redistribute ballots and everybody votes. But everybody can still vote the exact same way each round. There's no progress being made. After now currently 5 votes, we can say, hey, let's stop voting. And then technically we wouldn't have a candidate. And it would revert to the executive committee to start vetting and reviewing and voting on that. So I'd like to keep that power of nomination with the membership. And so in ranked choice voting, we go through, you would say, okay, there's 5 candidates. We could have ranked choice voting where you say, I want to rank these people 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you still get to vote for your first choice. After the first round of voting, if somebody has a majority, it's over. If nobody has a majority, the person who came in last is dropped. And then if you voted for that person, your second choice now becomes your vote. So if I had voted for candidate number 5 and they get dropped, and my second choice was candidate 4, my vote isn't flushed, it just redirects to number 4. We retabulate at that point. If somebody has a majority, we're done. If not, the person who's now in 4th gets dropped. We have 3 candidates left. And you don't have to vote for more than one person. If you say, I want to vote for candidate A only, and if that person gets dropped, I'm not voting for anybody, that's still your right. You're not forced to pick 5. It's just a way to operationally expedite, instead of doing rounds and rounds of physical ballots and collecting them and counting them, to say, we've already kind of done that, and say, what are your choices, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or just 1 and 2, or just 1, or whatever you want to do. It just expedites that process. So everybody's vote still counts. The nominated candidate would eventually have to have a majority, and there's still a chance that nobody gets a majority and it reverts to the EC. So that's essentially the nuts and bolts of it.
Can there be a strange situation, say if we had 3 people, and 50% like person number 1 and 50% like person number 2, and everyone took person number 3 as their second choice? So everyone would have picked person number 3 as their second choice, and yet person number 3 fell off because they got no votes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So in that case, if it's 50-50-0, but then everybody voted for number 3 100% of the ways to be their second choice, then correct. None of those, because 3 got dropped. Number 1 and number 2 are still in the race because they aren't the lowest one on the list. So we haven't reverted to those people's second choice yet. But it is possible that your second choice has already been dropped out of the race. Yeah.
Are you proposing ranked choice voting for the very first round, or is it only if it's contested and we've gone through a couple rounds?
So I would say right from the get-go. And again, as you saw today, we can always take a floor amendment and say we're going to bypass what we've stated as our voting bylaw. So again, if we say we're doing ranked choice voting and there's only one candidate, we can say skip it, we'll just do a hand vote. But then if there's even 2, I mean, essentially ranked choice voting really doesn't come in, because 1 and 2, if you voted for number 2 and they got dropped, by definition, number 1's probably going to be the winner. But
so basically, it would require, it's a good idea of more rewording in section 8.3, which is basically the 10-step process and how we kind of do that now. If you look at the 10th point, basically it says when 2 or more candidates are on the ballot for an office, and after 2 ballots, none of them have achieved the required votes for nomination, the candidate with the fewest votes gets removed from the ballot. Candidates eliminated shall be offered 1 minute to address the convention prior to the next ballot. In case of a tie, that with the fewest votes determines who is eliminated. So that's one question I have. Here it's giving people who don't make it into the second round a minute to address people and either throw their support behind someone else.
We need to make 0 progress each round, and we're physically handing out ballots. This way we hand out ballots once, and then we go off, we scurry off and tabulate, that's not hard. Honestly, the tedious part is revoting and revoting and revoting.
I mean, this has been used in industry for years. I mean, I first heard about this back in '72.
That's 1972?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, actually. I suppose you could tell me what was going on in 1872.
I'm the senior advisor.
Well, senior, I thought it said, you know.
Yeah, senior.
Sorry. Yeah, so yeah, industry was used a lot back then, so, yeah, so I'd say it's easy to do.
Yeah.
Easy. We have a little criticism of it too.
So the current proposal is to implement ranked choice voting and strike all contradictory sections.
Yeah, and then, so I guess before I'm going to rescind my official motion, what's the conversation about whether it's, if we do ranked choice voting, and that's just a hypothetical, do we want it to be majority or 2/3? Just what's the feel of the group? Because,
Majority.
Okay, I'll just point out a story. Bob Helland from another party came here and was one vote short of getting 2/3. And if it would have been simple majority, he would have been our nominee. And there were a lot of people who I think would have been very irate because he basically kind of jumps party and he tends to bash us quite a bit. And that goes back to how many people can come here and vote in the first place. So if we're going to make it, keep it hard for people to vote, I don't think we should make it easy for them to become our nominee. That's just my 2 cents.
Maybe it's 2/3 for party jumpers and 50% for libertarians.
I'd like to second that too, because as you're doing ranked choice voting, it's going to aggregate votes
Mhm.
more readily than a standard ballot vote. So I think lowering the threshold is actually a more dramatic change under ranked choice
Okay.
voting than even the initial ballots. I think lowering it under 2/3 might be a bit of an issue.
okay, so I'm going to modify my motion, and I'm going to make a motion to move to ranked choice voting, strike all conflictory language, and have a ranked choice voting with 2/3 requirement. Would anybody like to second that?
Second.
All right. Any further discussion before we move to vote? All in favor of that, please raise your hand. All opposed? That passes also. Thank you. Any other bylaw?